Sonic the Hedgehog is a movie about a weird little blue man who runs fast. Let's see how fast he went. Probably very. This movie has such a weirdo history. Like, literally since it was very first rumored to exist, I feel like everyone's unanimous reaction was, what? Why? What? And I think it's safe to say, even after the movie has come out, my reaction is still somewhat similar. Or at least the why is still kind of there. Well, let's not get too deep into what I thought about it yet. Let's talk about how much of a weirdo bungo mess this whole movie was. So it was rumored to come out, and everyone was like, "What? Why?" And then it was like, "Oh, Jim Carrey's Eggman," and everyone's like, "What?" And then the trailer came out. Well, first there was a whole thing with the Chris Pratt and then he didn't look so bad there. And then the trailer came out and he looked like an actual nightmare demon that wanted to swallow my legs or something. But that's enough about the design fiasco and all that jazz. Because the movie is here now, and that's what matters. The movie has been released. It's out. You've seen it. Maybe you haven't. I'll start with things that aren't spoilers first, so don't worry. Let's split it into pros and cons, baby! Here's something I like. Sonic. As like him specifically. Ben Schwartz was a fucking perfect choice for Sonic the Hedgehog. I must admit I haven't seen much of his comedy content outside of Parks and Rec, but I have seen a little bit of him just like as a person outside of the show, and you can tell that he genuinely cares a lot about Sonic. And I think even just based on Jean-Ralphio from Parks and Rec, you can tell that he's really good at playing characters that are just obnoxious enough where it's kind of charming and funny. Although, I mean, Jean-Ralphio is kind of an actual scumbag, but he's still funny. And I think one of the things you need to get right about a rendition of Sonic is that personality where he's pretty annoying and kind of snarky, but you still like him. This Sonic doesn't really have as much attitude as other Sonics have had, but it makes sense given the backstory that they gave him in this movie for him to be a bit more innocent than usual. I also liked Dr. Robotnik. It was just kind of Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey, which I'm alright with. I've never been like a die-hard fan or anything, and his whole thing with acting like he was possessed by the spirit of Andy Kaufman, shit, that's a story for another time, but boy howdy, it sure does rub me the wrong way. He was having fun, I didn't really get the vibe that he was dragged on set for the Sonic movie just because they were like, "Oh, Jim, be funny, be funny." It seemed like he wanted to be funny, like he was enjoying himself and being wacky and everything. Would he have been my first choice for Dr. Robotnik? No. No, absolutely not. Who would I cast as Dr. Robotnik? I don't know. I didn't think that far ahead. But he did well. He was Jimmy. He was little old Jimmy, as he does. I also liked some of the jokes. Now, this movie wasn't a gut buster, but there were a few things in there that made me giggle quite a bit. It's a giggle buster. It's a gut tickler. It's a butt tickler. Oh. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to specify which jokes I thought were the funniest. There's a bit where Dr. Robotnik is just kind of walking and talking with his assistant, and I think he fakes him out of a high five and just chops him in the throat instead. And then his assistant just coughs really hard because he just got chopped in the throat. And then they just keep walking, and that's the entire bit. And I'm okay with that. I thought that was pretty funny. There were a couple jokes throughout the movie that felt like they were just writing the movie, and then all of a sudden they were like, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if this happened?" And then they just put it in there. Like, there's another part where Dr. Robotnik says the word interesting in Japanese, I think, and it's subtitled with the word interesting, and that's it. That's the joke. It's just that he said interesting in Japanese. Okay. That's funny enough. And there are a couple winks and nods to Sonic in general. Mostly the classic Sonic, though. You're gonna find that almost all of the little nudges towards Sonic's history are exclusively targeted towards classic Sonic, because that is definitely who they were trying to attract for this movie. This movie doesn't dismiss modern Sonic fans, but it becomes pretty apparent that the people they are trying to bring in the most are people who remember playing Sonic as a kid, and not so much people who are diehard Sonic fans to this day. And the weirdest little inside joke type line that I noticed was when Sonic is thinking about other planets that he can go to, the one that he mentions first is a mushroom planet, and he says something like, "Oh, it's nothing but mushrooms there. Huh, I hate mushrooms." And I was like, "Oh, I get it, cause of Mario. You're saying you don't like Mario. It's a little wink, like, oh, remember how Sonic and Mario used to be rivals?" I get it. But then the mushroom planet is mentioned like 10 more times throughout the movie, and it becomes like an actual location that's important for some reason. And then in retrospect, I was like, oh, okay, I thought it was just a little throwaway line jabbing at Mario, but did that matter? I guess it matters. It was just a really weird little thing. And you know what? I'm gonna say it now. I'm heading into like actual spoiler territory, because it's really hard to talk about what I liked and didn't like about this movie without dipping into spoilers. So here we go. Yippee! I also thought it was weird. You know, this isn't gonna be so much things that I dislike. This is the segment where I talk about the weird shit, because this movie was somehow totally generic and yet really bizarre at the same time. I forget if I've said that already. I thought it was weird that they saved Robotnik becoming actual Robotnik until the very, very, very end. I mean, I get it. It's sequel bait, but I honestly probably would have enjoyed this movie more if they had just done that from the start. I think it's kind of interesting how they gave Robotnik's appearance like an origin story, because he gets kicked through the warp ring to the mushroom planet, and it kind of skips forward a little bit, and where he's lost his mind a little bit more, and his hair got singed off, and his mustache got all frazzled, and his voice got more gravelly, so he sounds more like actual Robotnik. And it's cool, you know. I really, really liked that very last scene where Jim Carrey is, you know, doing more of a Robotnik voice, and he looks like how Robotnik typically looks. But if, like I said, if they had made him look like that from the beginning, I probably would have liked him more as a character. But I know that they wanted to tease a sequel and be like, oh, he's actual Robotnik now. He looks like how you remember him. Didn't you think he looked kind of weird? Well, this is why. He's supposed to look like this. Even though they showed that in the trailer, so kind of already knew that he was gonna do that. And the weirdest part of the movie, by far, oh my god, was the very beginning. So if I remember correctly, it actually starts out with Sonic running from Robotnik in the middle of a city, and it does a freeze frame thing where he's like, I bet you're wondering how I got here. But then he delves into his backstory, which was meant to be taken 100% seriously, but I had to try real hard not to just lose my shit. So in the span of like 2 or 3 minutes, it's established that Sonic lived on planet buttfuck or whatever. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Mobius. That's the planet that he's from, right? Mobius is like the Sonic planet. He's running around on a really pretty version of Green Hill Zone as a kid, a little freakish beast, a little horrid, big-headed, bean-shaped freak that I wish wasn't there. He's running around, and it's revealed that Sonic was raised by a big, realistic-looking owl named Longclaw, who was kind of a mother figure, and her only personality traits are, Sonic, you have to keep your powers a secret. I'm going to die now. That's all she fucking does. She just establishes that he needs to keep his power secret, that he needs to run away, and that the rings teleport him between worlds. And then she dies. That's the only narrative purpose she serves, is just to establish those things. And then she gets killed. Killed, I should mention, by the fucking Echidna tribe from the comics, I believe. I'm not a huge Sonic guy. I should have said that earlier. I was really into Sonic as a kid, but I do not know the deeper parts of Sonic lore, I apologize. But the Echidna tribe that Knuckles is from, I think, with Tikal and everything, she's not there. But she gets killed by a tribe of echidna-looking dudes. Okay, I guess that's how they're gonna incorporate echidnas into this movie? They show up for 2 seconds and kill his mom, and then they're never seen again? It was just... It was fucking hilarious. I'm sorry. I didn't laugh out loud because I'm not a rude moviegoer, and it was meant to be taken seriously and genuinely be sad. But like his mom, Longclaw, pardon me, appears and then dies like less than a minute later, and we're supposed to feel something about it. Longclaw doesn't even exist outside of this movie. They made her for this movie and then killed her immediately. Oh, also Sonic's feet. Sonic has feet. They don't really show his bare feet entirely, but they show a little bit of his feet, and they show like his footprint, and it looks like just like a big human foot. I didn't like that. That wasn't very good. I think I actually involuntarily went, oh no, when they first started like almost showing his feet, but it wasn't too egregious, but I sure didn't like it. Okay, now let's talk about what I straight up didn't like. I didn't like the tonal whiplash that kept happening all the time. So this movie's pretty lighthearted, you know, it's a fucking Sonic movie with no Shadow, so it's gonna be pretty lighthearted. There were multiple times in this movie, I think it was 3 times, where they try to trick the audience into thinking that Sonic is fucking dead. And each fake out was funnier than the last, and they were all meant to be taken completely seriously. One of his death fake outs is when they're running from Robotnik's drones and they beat them, and then Sonic flosses and fucking explodes. And we're supposed to think he's dead and be sad about it. And I think that scene in particular really encapsulates how much tonal whiplash is in this movie. Sonic was flossing and then exploded. And that happens multiple times. There are a few scenes where it might as well just be like, hey, what's up? My name is Sonic. I'm just running around and having a great time. Oh, but I sure am lonely though. That happens a lot, and it's really lazy. I also didn't like the premise. It was just a really lazy, unoriginal premise, you know. It's just, oh, Sonic isn't from this world, and now he's in our world. Whoa, that's crazy. I do think it's fitting, at least, that the premise kind of revolves around him having to run away. You know, like I said, the whole thing is that he's trying to escape the government and escape Earth, and go to a different planet so he can be safe. You know, that makes sense enough. That the plot revolves around him running somewhere, running away, you know, like a speed hog. Other than that, there just wasn't really anything to make the story stand out. And it's especially weird that for this movie they essentially made an entirely new Sonic, because Sonic already kind of has lore to go off of, doesn't he? I mean, I know it's not very much, especially in the classic games, but I just found it kind of odd that they completely rewrote his whole deal to say that he was raised by some owl and he had to escape to Earth to hide his power or something. I don't remember any rendition of Sonic before now that involved Sonic having some mysterious power that needed to be hidden from the world. But for all of the routes they could have taken for a Sonic movie, I guess this is one of the least offensive ones. But it certainly is not the most interesting. I could compare it to other live-action adaptation kids movies like The Smurfs, or there was a Yogi Bear one, I think, or any other number of movies where the premise is, oh, some little creature from not this world comes to us, and whoa, some wacky hijinks happen. The Iron Giant is the only movie that was allowed to do that, I'm sorry. Oh, also, I should mention the fucking product placement. Good God. The product placement in this movie was not subtle. So the main dude's wife is being all supportive about him moving to San Francisco and everything. So she says, I was just looking at some apartments on Zillow. And then it holds on a shot of her laptop open to Zillow for like a little too long. And then later, main dude McWhiteboy says that the only app on his phone is Olive Garden. So the wife says, because when you're there, and he says, your family. And it had a little hint of sarcasm, but it was also painful. It was quite painful. So is there anything I'm missing? I don't know, probably. So that's what I thought about the Sonic the Hedgehog movie in theaters now. Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Tell me in the comments. Fuck, wait, I gotta do this. Let's look at if I dug it or not. It was a movie. It was certainly something that I watched. It's only a little conflicting because in general, I think it's like a 5 out of 10. And then my complaints bring it down to a 4. But then the little perks that I actually liked bring it back up to a 5, So I think it's perfectly just middle of the road. This movie doesn't need to exist. I didn't really get much out of it. It was really weird, and there were a lot of things I didn't like about it. And yeah. So that's what I thought about the Sonic movie. I don't hate away.